All right, welcome everyone. Today is Wednesday, the 26th of August, 2026, and this is the SIG Cloud Provider office hours. We are a sub-project of the Kubernetes SIGs, and as such, we follow their meeting guidelines, which can be summarized as please be excellent to each other. And if you'd like to talk, please raise your hand and I will call on you. All righty, so let's start off by seeing, does anybody have sub-project updates that they would like to share with the group? It's like just a few of us here, so nothing to share today. All right, let's get into our agenda then. So I put a topic here because I think this issue has come up in our triage before, and I was going through it again, and when I looked at all the details, it started to become very interesting to me. So okay, so yeah, so many years ago, back in 2029, I'll make this a little bit bigger. Back in 2029, a former SIG cloud provider luminary, Andrew Sykim, put together this enhancement to promote the topology labels to GA. And so if, many of you might have seen these are the deprecated labels here for instance type and zone and region. They should be renamed to these, which they have been renamed to. So if we look in the well-known Kubernetes labels and taints and annotations document, we can see that, way back starting in 117, so we've we're like double the number of releases since then. This was declared as deprecated in favor of instance types. And the same is true for the other things. Like here's region has been declared as deprecated. And likewise, zone has been declared as deprecated as well. So these have been announced as deprecated for a very long time. Now, here's where it gets a little scary. When we go look at the enhancement, which has not been looked at or touched in 6 years, um, this enhancement describes exactly what we're talking about and everything, and like kind of the time frame for when things should be done. We should have been done way back in 121. And yeah, so when we look, this is still in alpha stage. So I think since it's been 8 or 9 years, people have had enough time to change their stuff. Um, I think that we should take one final chance to announce the deprecation of this and move to beta in like 1.38 with the plan that in 1.39 we are going to remove these deprecated labels. And then that will allow us to close out this ancient issue. Does anybody have questions, comments? I see Bridget, you've got your hand up, please.
I agree with the whole plan in principle. I think the timeline might not match what some Kubernetes removals of things over time have historically been. As I've understood it, sometimes things are whatever features, et cetera, that are being marked to be removed, changed, et cetera. Usually they get marked and then they actually get yanked out of the code base a release or two later. So the only thing I'm questioning, I agree with all of this, except I don't know if the rest of the community would appreciate the timeline that you're talking about. And I see that Walter's unmuted, so I'm sure he also has insights in this thought.
So I think it's a really good observation, Bridget. At the same time, I'm on Elmliko's side on this one. I would say we deprecated this. I mean, I remember when Andrew deprecated this like, many years ago. So it would be nice if we'd taken it to beta earlier. But like, I don't think anyone can with good conscience say we didn't warn them. I think I would say let's start with it as my vote would be start with it as the plan of record, see if we get any pushback. Also, let's see if the good news is we are the SIG cloud, we're the cloud providers. Like if we can if all the cloud providers are not using region or not using zone, and I would guess that the mine is likely the only one that does, but I could be wrong. Uh, because I think those are our terms, not any of your terms, which is why we went to terms like failure zone. Um, yeah, if none of the cloud providers are using them at this point, I think we're probably safe. But if we do find a cloud provider using them, maybe then we consider if it chatting with that cloud provider and extending the timeline a little bit. But I would say let's start with the timeline Almiko's suggesting, and then if we get a warning sign, we can come back to the timeline. That'd be my vote.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I agree with what you're saying there, Walter, and I also agree with what you're saying too, Bridget. Like, community might push back on us. That's why I want to say, let's make an announcement. Let's say, hey, look, these things have been marked. They've been marked deprecated on this page for years now, right? For
Yeah.
many, many versions. So they've been marked deprecated for a long time. We just never did the
Mhm.
due diligence of actually removing them. So I say, yeah,
Yeah.
let's make an email. And let's also do some research. And this is where I'd love to find someone in the community who wants to follow up on this, because I think,
Mhm.
like, I'm happy to make an email and start announcing this, but I think it would be great to have a community member who could go do some research and say, all right, are any of the SIG owned cloud controllers still using these labels? Can you find the deprecated labels in KK? Can you do a little searching through the Kubernetes org and see if we're still using these at all? And if we are, that's a great chance to like open some issues and whatnot. And that might give us pause to say, okay, we're planning on removing these, but we found a couple places where they're still in use. So we're going to give that like 2 cycle or 3 cycle span to fix these things. And then we're finally going to remove it. But like, hopefully, I'd love to find someone in the community who wants to follow up on some of this. And then, yeah, we could turn it into like a little research project or whatever. So for anyone here or listening out there in the ether waves, reach out to
Mhm.
me reach out to any of us on Kube Slack in the SIG Cloud Provider channel if you're curious about helping.
Um, Clarifying question. When we're talking about announcing the deprecation for 1.38, I believe 1.38, 1.37 is like right now, this minute. 1.38 is going to be December, I think. And 1.39 is going to land in April-ish. So we're talking, a good 6 to 9 months. I mean, it's not instant. Like, it sounds like we're doing something imminent, but it is, a release or two out. Like, if I'm understanding your suggested timeline correctly. I see Walter has a thumbs up. What do you think, Amiko?
Yeah, I mean, like, I was just choosing whatever the next release is, because like at this point they've been marked as deprecated for so long that it's like I don't think it's very controversial if we say these things have been marked as deprecated for like more than 6 years.
Mhm.
We're giving you one final chance to say something, and we're going to
Mhm.
remove them next release.
Yeah.
So I was kind of saying, whatever, if we're in 1.38 timeframe now, maybe the thing to do is wait till 1.38 releases or announce it before.
Oh no, 1.37 is dropping like today
Right,
or something.
right.
Like,
So as
so
1.38
1.38 hasn't even spun up yet. Yeah.
Right. So as we start 1.38, that's where we might send an announcement and say, okay, we're planning on finally removing these. We're going to get the 1.38 cycle will be the last cycle that these labels exist as well-known
Mhm.
labels. In
Mhm.
1.39, we'd like to remove them unless people raise objections. And we're
Right.
going to look through
That's fair.
the code that we own to make sure that we're not using them anymore and that we'll fix it. And we'll look at KK as well. And then we'll
Mhm.
see what happens after that.
That
Okay.
seems fair. Walter, do you want to tell us more about what you're dropping in as a link? I'll add it to the notes.
Okay.
Yeah, but whoever's screen sharing, could you bring that up and go and just look for topology.kubernetes.io?
If I can spell topology, yes.
I'm glad I'm not the only one. Yeah, so I just a quick look um to your earlier point, Elmico. Um I think that one other thing we should do is a scrub through our own documentation, because in one place it may say documented and in another it may say We're not using these keys. However, the registered label keys are nonetheless recommended rather than the private label keys region that are used. Like,
Totally
we,
agree.
we're going to have to do, clearly, we're going to have to do a little bit of cleanup because,
Well, right. That's why I'm saying I want to turn this into a little bit of research project. And I've
oh,
talked yeah, I've talked to many people in the community who have asked me like, "Hey, how can I get involved and whatnot?" And I think this is like a great opportunity for someone to get involved. And like, like I said, for anyone who may be watching this later or whatever, I'm perfectly willing to get involved and help someone work through this process. I don't have the bandwidth right now to kind of chase down all these leads and do the research, but if someone wants to look through the code and do exactly what you're talking about, Walter, like look through all the doc site, figure out where we've been using these things, and if there are opportunities for us to supplement those and kind of make it better. So yeah, I'm totally with you. Okay. Does anybody else have like questions or comments about this topic? Okay. Well, let's move along to the next topic then. Daniel, you've got an update from the second meeting with SIG Multicluster. Apologies, I couldn't be there for that.
Yeah, no worries. Um, during the first meeting, and actually, do you mind if I share my screen?
Yeah, let me make you a co-host. Let's see here if I can get it to work. All right, go for it, Daniel.
So during the first meeting, I primarily went through a deck, and I've only ever so briefly showed the demo, just some screens. But on yesterday, um, I basically spent 15 minutes just walking through the demo using the Crow plugin for Headlamp, and with real clusters on all three clouds. Very similar to what I showed you guys, but with the plugin. And um, they were able to get a sense of the resource graph definition, how it decomposes, how it can use external references, how you can use uh, going down to like having to create storage in the different cloud providers, and how things, even though things are different, it's still able to decompose things nicely, or sorry, to compose things nicely. And so the outcome of all of that, I don't know if you can see my screen. I just used
I can see it.
Gemini to give me a little summary. I got the transcript from Laura, and I just used Gemini to give me a little summary of the responses from SIG Multicluster to the demo. So one thing they mentioned that um, some of these um, with these clusters, when it comes to cluster specific configuration, like the storage type for each cluster, that they noted that different tools, within the Kubernetes ecosystem, um, also kind of face the same problem. And right now, my way, I told them that the way that if you had to do it today, it's a very deliberate choice. You write it in your YAML, and then you have to deploy to each specific cluster. Said, in terms of what the dream could be, it would be, hey, you have already cluster profile and cluster property primitives. What if some of this information came from there? And then any other consumers of those properties could use that, whether it's us or anybody else. Just as a for instance, just to um, so that kind of, I think, resonated well. Again, no decisions. This is super early days. Was just done for them to inform and help them to see what we were thinking about. And then in terms of when Lara then kind of shared her screen and walked me through the different APIs and primitives that they are working on, and she felt that there's very nice overlap between Crow and what some of these things are doing, in the way that, hey, we may really should actually be working together in some capacity to maybe complete the story. So for instance, they have the work API, which has the concept of encapsulated workloads that have to travel together. That sounds a little bit like what Crow is trying to do. Then they have the placement API and the inventory API. And it said that this is something where Crow could actually fit very nicely because the placement API tells you where to put things, but not necessarily what to put in those things, in those clusters. So this is where she saw that there's definitely a place here to see how we could fit Crow into this story. And then they also mentioned that they have this work with the MCS API also that focuses on workloads across multiple clusters. So there's a lot of parallel work. And so I think this is very good timing to us to say, hey, let's just make sure that the left hand knows what the right hand is doing and see how we can work together. The use cases in terms of, what is the face of the problem? Back to business outcomes, like what are we talking about here? I gave them three. This is going back to even the meeting from 2 weeks ago. So I said, at the end of the day, the reason why we're doing all of these things is these three use cases. One is capacity. So what if you have an application that where some resources lived in one cluster, but perhaps you needed GPUs that only existed or were only available in another cluster? Wouldn't it be nice if you could have an application that could spread across a single application across multiple clusters to do that? Or perhaps is you have one instance, one complete instance in cluster A and another complete instance in cluster B, right? That's fine too. But either way, you're dealing with this capacity story that today Crow just stops at the cluster scope. The other one was the compliance. What if you need to be running a solution on a FedRAMP cluster and you fell over, but you cannot fall over to just any other cluster. It has to also be a FedRAMP compliant cluster. So again, that's a nice story that and you have to fail over in a way that is coordinated, right? In the right order. So that's where Crow and multi-cluster could actually work together nicely. And finally, fault tolerance and life cycle. So again, the idea is that compliance aside, if you ever need to drain one cluster or to maintenance in one cluster and need to fail over to another cluster, you have to do it in an orderly manner for your application to kind of migrate as gracefully as possible. So that was kind of like the face of the problem. Said, hey, if we do this right, these are the use cases that we will be unblocking. And then Jacob Mueller was there. So I said, hey, I introduced and said, hey, by the way, he's done a ton of work with Crow. He probably has some very interesting insights. And so he also shared that basically within the Crow community, there are a lot of this one-off projects where they're trying to do something like this, but not necessarily that nobody has actually tried to drive the alignment at the between SIGs to build something native, and so you have this one-off things that nobody will actually broadly adopt. So this is an opportunity to perhaps it's not necessarily that nobody's ever tried to do this before, but perhaps nobody's ever tried to do it in a way that is Kubernetes native, in a way that perhaps we can bring the entire community and it could be available in every single cloud by every single cloud provider. That perhaps is the real delta between what we're looking at now and what many people perhaps have tried in the past. And finally, Laura, what she concluded saying was that she would like to have this in some type of document so that she can also socialize it. She said there's a few members of the multi-cluster team that are across multiple zones. If we give her like a doc, then more people can look at it, and then from there figure out, okay, what is the right way of tackling, almost like a letter of intent, if you will, in my head. Saying, okay, we're not even trying to solution anything, but say, what is the problem space? And then we can figure out what is the right way to tackle this. Is it just a matter of a couple of caps, or does it need like we mentioned before, maybe a working group, or maybe we don't need a working, but once we understand what is the problem space, and is it a matter of like something that would take us 3 months to do it, or a couple of years to get there, then from there we can work backwards and figure out what we need in order to materialize that dream.
Yeah, really nice, Daniel. First of all, thank you for doing the legwork of, of building this collaboration and going to talk to SIG Multicluster, because I think this helps to break down the silos and everything. And like I'm really happy to see that it was well received over there. Yeah, does anybody have questions or comments for Daniel?
Comments, observations. Awesome work. Yeah, let me before I say anything, let me double down on what Elmiga said. I will also I will say caps scare me a little bit. I think it would be good for us to be careful about and I think in the first meeting I mentioned this, but I think we need to be a little careful about, actually not building people silos, but building code silos. Bridget and a few others can talk to the fact that Crow was designed with some very deliberate silo walls about what it did and did not do. And I think a lot of the stuff you're working on is stuff that we very much wanted someone to do, but a lot of what you're doing we didn't want within the walls of Crow. The intent was always that Crow was a tool to allow the stuff you're doing to be done, not that stuff would be done in Crow.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so what I will say is I want to be very careful about what is in scope and what is out of scope. And, the idea that a lot of what you're doing was deliberately intended to be done, but it was intended to be done in a separate project. And that I think we've got to be pretty clear on where those walls are. I'm happy to support you. I just, and as a related item, one of the first things they talked about was, as you mentioned, was storage. Sorry, I'll let you go in a second, Bridget. But one of the things I will say is I think there are several interesting primitives around storage, right? There's ACK, ASO, KCC, each have their own primitives for the storage for that cloud provider. And then the intent was that a platform team could build the next layer up that made them all look the same with Crow, but even that the ability, while there was an ability to make them look the same with Crow, the actual primitives wouldn't be part of Crow. And in fact, I think I remember 2 years ago, Bridget using exactly this example with Helm and going, look, this is something, like Helm like to do. We should allow this to be done, but we should never be the catalog of where this stuff gets done. Right. And so, very long-winded way of saying, I think this is awesome, but I think we need to be a little careful about allowing different pieces to have their own evolution, their own speed, their own lane, and not tread on each other's toes. And that's a lot of what you're putting together. But I think a lot of that means we got to be careful about where those lane markings are. And with that, I will turn it over to Bridget.
I just want to agree with everything you're saying and clarify that keep in mind we have options that make perfect sense to build something that works really well. And then we have preservation of choice for people who want to do something different. And those are not the same. So I don't want us to accidentally build something too opinionated that means that certain various cloud providers, various neoclouds, people doing their own hybrid and on-prem end up losing out on choices because we've baked in too many opinions. Does that make sense?
100%, yeah. No, and I think this is in my head, actually, the way I think of it is what are the outcomes that we're trying to accomplish? Again, the capacity story, the compliance story, the fault tolerance story, and then work backwards and say, okay, so where's where's the natural and the right thing to land the different components? And then Crow probably has an important piece to play in that. But what exactly and what is the scope and what is the sandbox? I have absolutely zero idea right now. And the way I put it, and this is probably too simplistic, but the way I put it to the team on yesterday was that it's not that Crow wants to do placement. Is that when you're doing placement, you probably need Crow in order to compose things correctly in all the different clusters. Again, but that's super high level. But again, that speaks to the notion that, to Walter's point, everything has to keep on its own swim lane. Otherwise, it's going to get too complicated. So one of the strengths about Kubernetes is that it has really good abstractions and very good primitives. So we have to continue that to make sure that, to your point, Bridget, that we are not closing the door to new clouds and everybody that might want to use it, but now we made a choice that prevents them from using that for sure.
100% agree with that. And in fact, I think you've probably heard me say this before, Daniel, but sort of the simplistic way that we originally envisioned Crow was that it's an RGD to RGD translation layer, right? Thereby allowing you to very, very much use the existing power of Kubernetes.
Yeah, I think another important thing to clarify is I remember when we were starting the Crow conversation, we very deliberately scoped it narrowly and put it under SIG Cloud Provider so that we wouldn't end up elbowing out people's startups or other projects, CNCF projects and the like that are trying to do something specific where we don't need to be having Crow try to fill all of the space in the world. There are other projects that people want to use, and we want to have this be as composable as possible to give people the optionality that lets them build the platforms that work for them, if that makes sense.
Sure. And so I am be happy to start the document, but to everyone's point here, I don't have a strong enough intuition to know what the boundaries are. So I can start something, but you're gonna need to basically shepherd me and say you've gone too far, or actually you haven't got here, but you haven't gone far enough over there. And then this I can just be your scribe, and then maybe bring in the end user kind of mindset. Okay, again, this is what we're trying to get at. How the details, that you guys will be, probably much more have a much stronger intuition or better opinion than I will. So yeah, by no means am I trying to kind of step on anyone's shoes or take Crow in a direction that was never meant to do it. I'm just trying to say, ultimately we all agree on the outcomes. It's just a matter of trying to find out the right tool at the right place at the right time.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're doing the right things, Daniel, and like you're bringing this, you're doing it the open source way. You're bringing it out. You're attempting to collaborate. You're working across SIG boundaries. So I think this is naturally where we as the SIG leaders or whatever, we're here to support what you're doing and help you too, right? So you had mentioned before, like in talking with multi-cluster, it wasn't clear whether you'd need a working group or whatever to do this, or a sub project or something. That's where we can absolutely help out, and I think that the next things as we get deeper into this is, yeah, kind of like understanding what what are the short-term goals versus the long-term goals. What would we try to achieve with SIG multi-cluster? And that's going to take a lot of conversations between the Crow community and like SIG multi-cluster as well, to figure out where, what is the collaboration built around.
Mhm.
Once we can figure that out, then we could talk about working groups, sub project, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Because it might turn out that this is something temporary, right? And this is where we get into the structure of everything. And it's like, okay, multi-cluster and cloud provider believe that they need to work together to produce some sort of cap around how these things are going to integrate, right? If that's the case, and there are other SIGs who want to be involved in this as well, because who knows, like SIG storage might have interest, SIG networking,
Sure.
who knows? But if that starts to become bigger, then we could say, all right, this looks like the shape of a working group. We want to try to achieve some plan, and then we're going to disband. We're not going to own any code or whatever. But if it turns out that, like, in order to make this work, multi-cluster and the Crow community think that they need to build some connector project or something, right? That would dictate more of like a sub project that's owning code. And then we would say, okay, should SIG multi-cluster on the sub project? Should SIG Cloud Provider on the sub project? So first, you're doing the work now to kind of figure out what we need next. And I
Yeah.
realize we're just at the beginning of this journey, but I just wanted to kind of reiterate what I think Walter and Bridget were saying. And we're here to support this activity. We definitely want to make sure that we preserve the original intentions of Crow, but if there's a way for us to collaborate, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I also want to just mention, like, don't you I'm not saying you were particularly negative on yourself, but don't be too negative on yourself at the beginning. Like, um you are a member of this community. You, you have CUJs, you have opinions, and those are all valid. Like, yeah, Elmico and Bridget and others may have done a lot of wood chopping and carrying water and have maintained the code for a while and the community, which gives them a certain amount of authority. But everyone here, like, we're not a corporation, we're not a totalitarian regime. We all have, we all have opinions, we all have, rights to those opinions, and everyone's opinions has merit to some degree, right? And we work together and we get things done. And so we may disagree, but that doesn't mean that you're wrong. It just means we disagree.
That's totally fine. No, thank you. I appreciate those comments. Is there any direction? So the only thing I have in mind is this document to start to articulate or to codify. I don't know if you call it letter of intent, but basically the problem space that we're seeing to kind of create a shared understanding of what at least the problem space or what the dream could be. Uh, and but I mean, again, um, I don't have to be the one to start it. I'm happy to do it, but I'm here just what is the and I would rather get some direction from SIG Cloud
Yeah.
Provider, and
No, I
then
think,
I'll just align with that.
yeah, no, like, I mean, Daniel, again, this kind of comes back to like, a lot of this is coming back to like our open source ethos and everything, right? And we want to encourage people to get involved and to share things and whatnot. So if you've already talked with SIG multi-cluster and I'm forgetting her name now. Uh,
Laura,
Laura has already talked about, getting a document set up. I would say reach out to the other Crow maintainers, because we have a couple here, but they're,
sure.
Jesse and Amin and whatnot are not here. Reach out to some of the other Crow maintainers and reach out to Laura and, work. I would say the next step is to get that document set up, right? And
Mhm.
then to start identifying, work between those communities. But a big part of this for me is like taking the communication back to the Crow community because they won't have another meeting till next week. So
Mhm.
there's a little bit of a time adjustment here. But in the meantime, if you can work with Lauren to get a document set up, to get it public, and if that means, using a document location that you have as a place to start coordinating, like a public Google Doc or a HackMD doc or whatever's
Mhm.
available to you, like like at Red Hat, I can't make public Google Docs, so I tend to not use Google Docs when I want to communicate. I use HackMD or something, right?
Mhm.
If it comes down to it, you might need to make the document. Just make sure you put it in a public place where we
Sure.
all have access to it and we can all share it. We don't need to request, permissions and whatnot. I
Perfect.
think
Yeah.
Walter,
Well,
did you want to add something there?
yeah, a couple quick things. If you make a Google Doc, ping me on. You can always ping me on Slack, but there are a couple there. All you need, well, given that there's a couple of SIGs, you need to share it with each of the SIGs, but the approved method is like there's a SIG cloud provider, or like Kubernetes dash SIG dash cloud provider or something .googlegroups.com, or and another one for multi-cluster. I can get you the exact group names, but if you share the doc with those groups, or you could share it with Dev Kubernetes IO. Either one of those should be fine, depending on how broadly you want to share it. but you don't need to make it completely public. You should just be able to share it with one of those groups and have it be sufficient.
Perfect. Yeah,
The other thing I would say is, if you make a proposal, and I would suggest making a proposal because otherwise we're going to hem and haw forever.
Mhm.
If you make a proposal and people disagree, then that just prompts them to do another proposal, and now we have alternatives considered.
Yeah.
So I think that just makes things better.
Perfect. Sounds good. And I have been talking with Jesse quite a bit offline. So I think the idea was that I was obviously that um, he was going to chime in and lean in on this also very heavily. But yeah, I'll sync with Jesse. And I Slack him at least. We Slack at least a couple of times a week since we started this whole story.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I agree with what Walter's saying too. Like, Walter and I do a lot of agreeing with each other, so it's kind of fun when we disagree because then it gets kind of exciting. But yeah, but yeah, like I totally agree. Like, make a document, share it to these like share it out in these specific places. And honestly, um, I think you're taking a very measured approach here. You're trying to get the collaboration involved. You're trying to make sure all the pieces are in place to go forward. There does become a time in every kind of open source project or every community where it's like, yeah, you can see we get a lot of enhancements and feature proposals that come to the SIG even without any of that preparatory work. So I would say if you feel motivated, yeah, start working on a document, start proposing it, say like, this is what I would like to see. And then we can have a conversation in the community and like, yeah, your idea might not survive all the way through to the end the way that you envisioned it, but hopefully we'll collaborate and come up with something that like, is a great feature for everyone. So I would say if you feel strongly about it and you have the time to work on it, absolutely run forward, start proposing something, put your best ideas forward. And then, yeah, we can have a public conversation about it and figure out, what do we want here? What do we need out of this?
Perfect.
Okay. All right. Does anybody else have comments or questions about this topic? All right. Well, I am not seeing any hands go up or anything. So thank you again, Daniel. It's awesome to see this kind of collaboration happening. So that's the end of our agenda for today. I will give an update here because I've been going to the SIG testing meetings, and I want to give a shout out to Patrick Oley, who's been doing a lot of work looking into cleaning up tests and like identifying cloud provider tests and everything. I think we're almost at the point where this test grid is probably not useful to us anymore. Um, and to that extent, I think there's in probably the next couple of months, there's going to be some work to remove SIG Cloud Provider from some of these really old GCE based tests where we were listed as like blocking, it's one of the SIG. These are blocking tests where we were listed as one of the owners. But in going through the history and talking with Patrick and the others, there's nothing in there that's testing cloud controllers. There's nothing in there that's specific to what we are doing these days. And so it's probably best if we remove ourselves from that and start to look at this under the new guise of like the testing effort that that I've been trying to push forward. And to that extent, Walter, some of the work you've been doing around cops, there was a big discussion in the SIG testing meeting about like with the direction we're going away from these customizable scripts, and into cops with a little bit of pushback from the cluster API community. But like I wanted to give voice to like the cops motion here because I think as much as I would love to have a cluster API solution, I don't think it's as simple or straightforward as the cops solution is. And so I just wanted to let you know I highlighted that in the SIG testing meeting, just that you've been doing some great work and your team's been doing great work to kind of push in the cops direction. And so that maybe if we have better cops support in the future in our CI, that's going to really enable some of the work that we want to do in creating these different kind of distribution deployments or whatever. So just wanted to share that with the group.
That was a beautiful lead into something I wanted to mention anyway. Thank you, Almico. I'm not sure that would have worked better if we'd practiced it. So, I have been doing a bunch of work on cops recently, which I wanted to mention. I would love if I could get a partner who works on a different cloud to work with me. It's pretty easy for me to build a lot of the features that I'm interested in and that I think other people are interested in cops for GCP. It would be nice to see those same features added for other clouds. So I'm moving forward in trying to build sort of more options in deployment shapes. I mean, when I started, cops had, the basic, what I would call, you know, excuse the GKE perspective. It had the basic regional, zonal and regional cluster concepts, right? Where it's either, one node control plane or a 3-node control plane, all of which are completely homogeneous. I've now been adding support for more heterogeneous control plane types for folks who are interested in building larger Kubernetes clusters. And, I'm happy to work with other people. I'm also starting to look at, are there other interesting things that we want to be able to support there? And so, one, if anyone's interested, reach out. I'd love to work with you guys on that. Two, going back to what you actually said, Elmiko, I think that the community at large would be a lot better off if we kind of started working with cluster API, working with the testing, and tried to get to the point where there was a more standard kind of idea of what of one, maybe two distros of Kubernetes with well-trodden paths and a really easy way to do setup. And so I would, if you want to have that chat again, or those guys would like to chat with me, let me know. I would happily attend. I think it's an area where we can really make things better for the open source community at large.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you like 100% on all of that. Whether it's cluster API or cops or whatever, like, yeah, making this better for the community and showing people how to how we add new platforms, how we add new tests, how we expand these things. Yeah, I'm all about that. So I may not be able to help you out with this specific cops request here, but I'm gonna keep I'm gonna keep working on the SIG testing stuff because I want to see us get to a point where we have a new test grid that's coming out of tests based around our cloud provider framework and that we can see all this stuff. And I think it's going to be really important to have the work that you're doing as part of that because we need to have a simple way for people to be able to create these, different distros, like all the stuff we've been talking about for years. So yeah, I'm happy to do more of this. And I see Kirthan reaching out to say that, he can help with the cops provider for AWS. Yeah, I'd say
Yeah, Kirthan, please.
yeah, like I'm almost at the point where I think I want to come and do a demo of the testing framework that we've been creating. So like I want to come here and do a demo of that, just show like kind of the early progress we made. And I think that's going to help us to kind of dictate what this direction we're going, where eventually these roads will meet. And yeah, it'll be great for the community, I think.
Well, one interesting thing I will say, kind of, this is maybe mostly for Elmiko. I'm sorry if other folks get bored, but one of the things that I've discovered, like once you go under the covers of the cops tool, uh, when you say create cluster, what it's actually doing is generating a bunch of CRDs. They're not stored anywhere other than on the file system, but they are CRDs, and they're a declarative description of the cluster you're about to build. And in fact, you can then turn around and manually modify that declarative description to do something that the command line tool is too complicated for the command line tool to do. But it likens me back to a conversation you and I had about the idea that it'd be really nice to have a declarative language that described a cluster. And so at some point, it might be interesting to actually sit down as a larger group and look at that, because at some level, I mean, there's probably a dozen types involved, but it is actually a declarative language for describing what a cluster looks like.
And I see Kirthan. I want to get Kirthan in here too. But yeah, and Walter, that's where I think Cluster API comes in as a nice fit because it is in some respects that declarative API. Kirthan, did you have something you wanted to add there?
No, I was just trying to ask for the priest, like Walter, do you have any issue or something which I can look for that COPS thing, new changes or the enhancements you're trying to plan to work on? Or
Ping me on Slack or on email, and I will send you some of the functionality I've added that now works on GCP that it would be nice to add to AWS and Azure. And anyone else,
Yep.
I noticed we've got someone from CoreWeave here. I don't think we have a COPS for CoreWeave, but I mean, if someone's interested in that, I don't think there would be a problem with it.
Sure, yeah, we'll reach out on Slack.
All right, cool. Yeah, awesome. I love hearing all this. Let's look and see if we have any issues that need to be triaged here. Okay. Node with empty spec.provider ID and no cloud provider VM does not get deleted by the CCM. Okay, this looks like a bug that we actually need to kind of investigate here. An empty spec.provider ID. So node was not cleaned by the CCM and had to be manually deleted. Okay, well, it sounds like this is potentially a bug that we need to look at.
This one gets a little, yeah, I don't know if Daniel has an opinion on this one, but this one seems a little interesting to me. The naive thing, I wonder if it would be dangerous. At some point, I don't know if we ever plan on having multi-cloud provider clusters, but if we ever had multi-cloud provider cluster, I wouldn't even know which CCM would then be
Right.
on the hook to do the cleanup. And I mean, if it weren't for the phrase, and no cloud provider, but if there's no cloud provider assigned, it seems kind of, I'm concerned that maybe it would be inappropriate for the CCM to do that cleanup with that piece missing. And with that, I'll let Daniel talk.
Oh, sorry, no, I don't have an opinion, but I was just offering some of my time. Like if you needed somebody to do some research or to look into things, I'm happy to do it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm just kind of like trying to leave a note here because Walter's got a great point. We have Serge has this from a long time ago. One of our community members has been proposing this and now of course Google's gonna or GitHub's gonna be like, so introducing explicit node ownership as like the entryway into that like hybrid cloud provider type clusters and whatnot. So like given that we have people pushing for these type of designs, I think it's really poignant yeah, to bring that up. But yeah, Daniel, if you want to investigate it further, I'll assign it to you. You can take a look deeper.
Yeah, I'll take a crack at it.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as it's assigned to a cloud provider, I think the relevant and assuming the relevant CCM is running, I think that I would once that's true, and if it's not getting cleaned up, I think then it's a bug. But it does seem like the cloud provider should have been written when the node object first came up. Like I would have hoped the kubelet would write that.
Right. What Daniel, what's your GitHub handle?
I think it's Dan Bruno 101.
Like that?
I think so, yeah.
All right. Yeah. You look great in the tux too.
I try to keep it classy.
Yeah, always, right? All right. That was the only issue. The other one is cleaning up the
Oh yeah, we do
cluster.
need to get the org membership thing sorted out before you can assign.
Oh, is Daniel
Oh,
not an org menu?
oh, sorry.
think
Maybe
we
I was
need
a
to
bit
sort that out.
presumptuous.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's fine. We just have to get that sorted out. I mean, we need to make that happen anyway. We just haven't done it yet.
Are you a member of Kubernetes SIGs though, aren't you, Daniel?
I'm a member of the mailing list.
Okay. Well, we'll have to get that sorted out then.
Yeah, I think there's some agreements you have to sign and other things before.
I did go through the contributor onboarding. I did go through all of that.
Right. So there's the CLA you have to sign. That's the first part. But then there's like, are you a member of Kubernetes SIGs, or the Kubernetes org? You'll have to make, if not, we'll have to get
No.
you an application started, or you'll
No,
have to open an application, and then a couple of us
Yeah.
can sponsor you.
I think that's the next step on my journey. I think Bridget and I discussed. I'm happy. Yeah, I would more than love to do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you're not a member of the, like, for example, like, I mean, like, what it would show it down here in your
Gotcha.
organizations. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, well, unless anyone's got a last minute ad hoc topic, I think we will call this a meeting.
I have a last minute ad hoc topic if you want to go back to the thing you just had open.
Yeah, please.
If you
Which
want to
one?
just flop right back
Yeah.
to that GitHub. Perfect. Scroll all the way up. Just a reminder to everybody who's been looking at GitHub and been reminded by GitHub about this Kubernetes Steering Committee election, say that 3 times fast. Please go look at that. It is all over the GitHubs. It has all the information you need. And if you do that, then you will be having your voice heard, which is valuable. So just since it's on the screen anyway, wanted to make sure to highlight that for people. And then I did put a link in the chat for how to apply for community membership. So
Awesome. Thank you, Bridget. And yeah, everyone vote. It strengthens our community. All right. With that, I think we will call this meeting to a close. And yeah, see y'all online and back here in a couple weeks.